The scent of old paper and lemon polish clung to the air in Mr. Abernathy's office, a smell that always reminded Ilara of libraries and forgotten histories. She sat, perched on the edge of a plush, wingback chair, its brocade fabric scratchy against her bare arms. In her lap, she clutched a faded photograph, its edges soft with age. It depicted Willow Creek Estate, not the sprawling, dilapidated mess she remembered from childhood, but a vibrant, sun-drenched manor. Sunlight streamed through the tall arched windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, a silent ballet that mirrored the nervous flutter in Ilara's stomach. She was alone for now, a solitude she cherished, knowing it wouldn't last. The heavy oak door creaked open, admitting Liam and Chloe Sterling, followed by Mr. Abernathy. Liam, ever the peacock, swept in with an air of entitlement, his tailored suit a stark contrast to Ilara's simple linen dress. He barely spared her a glance, his gaze immediately drawn to the ornate grandfather clock in the corner. Chloe, a vision in a silk wrap dressed the color of a summer sky, paused to adjust her reflection in a framed certificate on the wall. Her smile, aimed at the certificate, was practiced and insincere. "Ah, Ilara," Chloe chirped, finally acknowledging her, her voice dripping with a saccharine sweetness that Ilara knew was a prelude to something cutting. "You actually made it. Thought you might have forgotten, darling." Liam snorted, dropping into a chair opposite Ilara with an exaggerated sigh. "Hard to forget free money, isn't it, Ilara? Though I suppose yours will barely cover the bus fare." Ilara's grip tightened on the photograph. She met Liam's sneering gaze with a quiet resolve she didn't always feel. "Good afternoon, Liam, Chloe." Mr. Abernathy, a man whose composure seemed forged from granite, gestured towards the remaining chairs. "Shall we begin?" His voice was calm, a steadying presence amidst the simmering tension. He adjusted his spectacles, the faint click of the hinges, the loudest sound in the room. He cleared his throat, opening a thick, leather-bound folder. "As you know, we are here today for the reading of Mildred Vance's last will and testament." He proceeded to detail various minor bequests, each delivered in a measured tone. Then came the substantial sums. Liam and Chloe exchanged triumphant glances as Mr. Abernathy announced their respective inheritances, generous cash sums that would solidify their already comfortable lives. Liam's chest puffed out noticeably, while Chloe preened, a self-satisfied smirk playing on her lips. Finally, Mr. Abernathy's gaze settled on Ilara. "And to Ilara Vance, my beloved niece, I bequeath Willow Creek Estate, including all land, structures, and contents therein." A stunned silence descended. Ilara felt a peculiar mix of dread and a flicker of something she couldn't quite name. Perhaps hope. She knew Willow Creek was a ruin, a monument to neglect. Liam burst out laughing, a harsh, derisive sound that echoed in the quiet room. "The crooked house? You're kidding, right, Abernathy?" He clapped his hand to his forehead, shaking his head. Aunt Mildred always did have a twisted sense of humor, but this is next level. Chloe's laughter was a tinkling cascade, less aggressive than Liam's, but equally dismissive. "Oh, Ilara, darling, how quaint. A fixer-upper, I suppose." "Do tell, what are you going to do with a crumbling mansion and a forest of weeds?" She toyed with a strand of her perfectly coiffed hair, her eyes glinting with amusement. "Perhaps you could open a haunted bed and breakfast." Ilara felt the familiar prickle of humiliation. Her cheeks flushed, and she wished the floor would simply swallow her whole. The photograph in her hand felt suddenly heavy. a cruel reminder of what Willow Creek once was and what it had become. "I believe Aunt Mildred's intentions were clear," Mr. Abernathy interjected, his voice firm, though his eyes held a subtle sympathetic glint as they met Ilara's. "The estate is hers, free and clear," Liam scoffed. "Free and clear, yes. But what about the taxes? The upkeep? That place is a money pit, Ilara. You'll be bankrupt before you even step foot inside." He leaned back, a smug expression on his face. "Unlike us, of course. Chloe and I are off to celebrate our good fortune." "Maybe a trip to the Amalfi Coast, darling." He winked at Chloe, who giggled, a genuine sound for once. "A private jet, perhaps," Chloe added, her voice dripping with mock concern. "Oh, Ilara, I'm so sorry. You're stuck with a pile of bricks while we're swimming in cash. Life's just so unfair, isn't it?" They rose, a collective sigh of relief escaping them, as if the air in the room had become too polluted by Ilara's misfortune. Liam clapped Mr. Abernathy on the shoulder. "Good show, Abernathy. You know where to send the wire transfers." As they made their way to the door, Chloe paused, looking back at Ilara with a pitying gaze. "Honestly, Ilara, what will you do? Sell it for scrap metal?" The question hung in the air, a final stinging taunt. Ilara watched them go, the heavy door closing behind them with a definitive thud. The sudden silence was almost deafening, broken only by the rhythmic tick-tock of the grandfather clock. She was alone again, but the solitude now felt heavy, weighted by the scorn of her family. She looked down at the faded photograph of Willow Creek, then slowly, deliberately, her fingers traced the crumbling outline of the grand old house. A strange resolve began to solidify within her, a quiet defiance born from their mockery. They saw a ruin. She saw a challenge, the last resort. The scent of stale coffee and unread paperbacks clung to Ilara's small apartment, a familiar comfort that now felt like a shroud. Her meager savings, once a source of quiet security, now screamed inadequacy. Liam's condescending laughter, Chloe's pitying glances, they echoed in the silence, each syllable a fresh wound. Willow Creek Estate. The words had been delivered with a smirk, a final barbed gift from her aunt's will. It was less an inheritance, more a punishment, a desolate monument to her own insignificance. She had spent the last few days staring at her reflection, searching for a flicker of the defiance she'd feigned at the will reading. All she found was a hollow ache, a profound sense of being utterly adrift. Her friends, or rather, acquaintances, had offered platitudes and well-meaning but useless advice. "You'll figure something out, Ilara." But what exactly? Her administrative job, the one that barely covered rent and bills, had been eliminated in a recent restructuring. There were no other offers, no prospects on the horizon. Willow Creek wasn't a choice. It was the last resort, a desperate scramble for solid ground when the world beneath her feet had crumbled. With a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of her entire 29 years, Ilara began to pack. There wasn't much to gather. A worn suitcase held her clothes, carefully folded, each item a small memory of a life that was now definitively over. Her collection of antique maps, her only true indulgence, were wrapped in old newspapers and placed in a sturdy box. A faded botanical drawing, a gift from her mother, was tucked into her backpack, its delicate lines a stark contrast to the rough edges of her new reality. As she taped shut the last box, the finality of it all settled over her like a heavy cloak. This wasn't just a move, it was an exodus. She was leaving behind not only an apartment, but an identity, a version of herself that had always hoped for something more, something grander than a dilapidated estate. The old sedan, a hand-me-down from her grandfather, rumbled to life with a reluctant cough. The journey was long, stretching out across winding rural roads that grew increasingly desolate. Fields of corn gave way to dense, unkempt woods. The sky, a brilliant cerulean when she set out, gradually deepened to a bruised purple as twilight descended. With every mile, Ilara's apprehension mounted, a cold knot tightening in her stomach. What if the estate was beyond repair? What if she truly had walked into a trap, a financial abyss that would swallow her whole? Mildred Vance, for all her eccentricities, had never been entirely predictable. Perhaps this was her final cruel joke. Hours later, the headlights cut through the inky blackness, finally illuminating a rusted wrought iron gate, half off its hinges. Beyond it, a gravel drive, overgrown with weeds, snaked its way toward a hulking silhouette against the moonless sky. Willow Creek Estate. The name, once a whisper of faded grandeur, now felt like a mocking pronouncement. Ilara parked the car, its engine dying with a final shudder. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay. She stepped out, the silence pressing in around her, broken only by the distant hoot of an owl. The house loomed, a monstrous shadow consuming the night. Its once grand facade was scarred by time and neglect. Windows stared like vacant eyes, many shattered, their jagged edges reflecting the faint starlight. Ivy, thick and gnarled, clung to the stone walls, an invasive shroud that seemed to be slowly strangling the life out of the structure. A section of the roof had clearly collapsed, leaving a gaping maw open to the elements. A shiver, unrelated to the cool night air, traced its way down Ilara's spine. This wasn't the romantic forgotten manor of her childhood dreams, the one she'd pieced together from her aunt's cryptic anecdotes and that single faded photograph. This was a ruin, a monument to ruin. Despair, a heavy suffocating blanket, threatened to consume her. She clutched the botanical drawing tighter, its smooth surface a small anchor in the overwhelming desolation. This was it, her last resort, and it was even worse than she could have possibly imagined. Finding solace in dust and decay, the initial week blurred into a haze of aching muscles and gritty resolve. Ilara began outdoors, waging war on the encroaching jungle that had swallowed the garden whole. A rusty machete, a miraculous find in a forgotten shed, became an extension of her will. Thorns clawed at her clothes, dirt embedded itself beneath her nails, and sweat stung her eyes. Yet with every swing, a small dominion of earth was reclaimed. Nettles, towering over her, surrendered to the blade, unveiling cobblestone paths choked by moss and the ghost of forgotten ambition. The musk of damp earth and crushed foliage became her constant perfume, a more honest scent than the synthetic fragrances of her former life. Inside, the house was a sepulchre of dust and despondency. Each room offered a fresh gauntlet. The kitchen, a tableau of fallen plaster and rodent droppings, fell first. She scoured ancient grime from countertops, revealing the faint echo of once bright tiles. A leaky pipe beneath the sink, its persistent drip, a counterpoint to her own anxieties, was wrestled into submission with a wrench and plumber's tape. This small triumph ignited a flicker of satisfaction she hadn't felt in months. Days flowed into weeks, the rhythm of her labor a meditative hum. She moved from room to room, a solitary figure in a vast, silent expanse. The living room, its skeletal furniture shrouded in cobwebs, slowly emerged from the abyss. Dust motes waltzed in sunbeams piercing the grimy windows, each speck a testament to time and neglect. She swept, dusted and polished, coaxing a faint gleam from mahogany and highlighting the intricate patterns of a faded rug. A gaping aperture in the roof of what she presumed was a guest room had invited years of rain to wreak havoc. After much trepidation, Ilara ascended a rickety ladder, armed with a tarp and roofing nails. The sky, vast and indifferent, stretched above her. Below, the sprawling, overgrown estate lay exposed, a stark monument to untended things. Each hammer blow, crude and unpracticed, resonated with a defiant echo. When the tarp was finally secured, a raw, unadulterated sense of accomplishment washed over her. She lingered, simply inhaling the crisp air, the wind a soft caress against her face. There were no deadlines, no demanding overseers, no critical gazes, only the work, demanding and true. The house, once a symbol of her failure, began to feel less like an albatross and more like a shared venture, a silent partner in her slow ascent from rock bottom. The initial oppressive quietude transformed into a balm. She hummed off-key tunes as she worked, sometimes speaking aloud, outlining plans for a particular room, or simply musing on a stubborn stain. The house, in its immense emptiness, seemed to listen, offering no judgment, only quiet acceptance. Evenings were spent collapsed on a camp bed in the least dilapidated room, a temporary haven. The scent of disinfectant and old wood permeated the air, a peculiar comfort. She'd eat simple fare, usually tinned soup, heated on a single-burner stove, then read by the glow of a battery-powered lantern. Books discovered in a forgotten study, their pages brittle with age, offered windows into other worlds, other lives, pulling her further from the shadow of her recent past. She found an unexpected peace in the routine, in the tangible fruits of her efforts. Each cleared patch of garden, each scrubbed floorboard, each mended window pane was a small victory, a visible sign that she was not utterly lost. The relentless physical exertion, though draining, quelled the frantic hum of anxiety that had plagued her. Her mind, no longer pursuing societal approval, focused on the immediate, the practical, the real. The despair that had clung to her like a shroud began to recede, replaced by a quiet, burgeoning sense of purpose. Willow Creek, once a monument to her insignificance, was slowly, painstakingly becoming a testament to her resilience. The dust, the decay, the endless tasks, they were no longer symbols of a bleak future, but rather the raw material from which something new, something hopeful, was slowly being forged. The hidden floorboard, the library, a chamber Ilara had actively avoided, presented a challenge of a unique sort. Unlike the structural decay plaguing other rooms, here reigned a profound, almost suffocating stillness, thick with centuries of dust and dormant thoughts. Light, struggling through grimy, leaded windows, barely grazed the towering shelves, their volumes' spines long since muted by time. The air hung heavy with the scent of aged paper and an elusive metallic tang. Ilara's meticulous work began, as always, with the windows. She scrubbed away decades of filth until the afternoon sun, though softened by ancient glass, streamed in, illuminating a frantic ballet of dust motes. Methodically, she dusted each shelf, her fingers tracing titles, histories, philosophies, forgotten poets, and cryptic tomes bound in dark leather. It was a slow, almost reverent process, each book a hushed echo from the past. The room's heart was dominated by a colossal, intricately patterned rug, lying like a sleeping behemoth, its once vibrant colors obscured beneath a shroud of accumulated grime. Ilara eyed it with a blend of apprehension and resolve. This wasn't merely a decorative piece. It felt like a silent sentinel, anchoring the room's oppressive quiet. She tugged at a corner, a faint cloud of dust rising. The rug resisted, heavy and unyielding, its fibers seemingly melded to the floorboards. She knelt, digging her fingers into the coarse pile, grunting with effort. Hauling the rug, woven with threads far thicker than any modern textile, felt akin to wrestling a drowned beast. Slowly, inch by agonizing inch, she began to fold it back, finding the task more grueling than repairing the roof or clearing a clogged drain. Her muscles screamed, a fine sheen of sweat beading her forehead. The metallic tang in the air seemed to sharpen with her exertion. As the dense fabric peeled away, revealing broad, dark oak planks, a wave of cool air, slightly musty yet undeniably fresher, washed over her. The floorboards were old, deeply scored in places, but steadfast. Her relentless struggle with the rug continued until a significant portion of the floor lay exposed. She paused, hands on her knees, catching her breath, surveying her progress. The rug, now a bulky, coiled mass, cast a deep shadow. Her gaze swept over the exposed planks. Most were uniformly dark, polished to a dull sheen by time and countless footsteps. But one, nestled near the hearth, snagged her attention. It didn't quite align with its neighbors. A thread-thin sliver of darkness along its edge, a subtle irregularity in the otherwise seamless expanse, was almost imperceptible. Yet Alara, refined by weeks of meticulous observation, noticed. Curiosity, a spark steadily fanned by her isolation and the house's quiet mysteries, flared. She knelt again, running her fingertips along the offending plank. It felt solid, yet offered a minute give, a tiny vibration distinct from the immovable planks around it. She pressed harder. The minute gap widened almost imperceptibly, then snapped back. A cold, sharp thrill shot through her. This wasn't just an old house. It was a house with secrets. Her fingernail couldn't breach the narrow gap. Scanning the immediate area, her gaze fell upon a tarnished silver letter opener she'd found earlier on a dusty desk. Slim, ornate, perfect. Gripping it firmly, she carefully inserted its thin blade into the crack. The silver slid in with surprising ease. She wiggled it gently, then applied steady, upward pressure. A faint groan, like old wood sighing, echoed from beneath. To her astonishment, the plank lifted. Not much, just a fraction of an inch, but enough. She widened the opening, working the opener around the panel's perimeter, testing its resistance. It was less a single plank and more a small, expertly fitted square. With a final, determined grunt, she leveraged the opener one last time. The panel rose with a soft thunk, revealing a dark, empty space beneath. The metallic tang in the air intensified, coiling around her, a scent of forgotten things, of time held captive, and of something profoundly important. Alara peered into the darkness, her heart hammering against her ribs, the library's quiet now pregnant with possibility. The silver key and ancient maps. The metallic scent, now sharper, seemed to hum from the newly revealed hollow. Alara knelt, her heart thrumming a frantic rhythm against her ribs, and peered into the darkness. Her fingers, still trembling from the effort of prying the panel, brushed against something solid and cool. It was a box, undeniably. Not a small trinket box, but something substantial, its edges softened by time. The darkness within the cavity was absolute, but the weight suggested a significant presence. Carefully, she reached deeper, her fingertips exploring the cold, smooth wood. It was heavier than she'd anticipated. a solid block of oak perhaps. Her nails scraped faintly against what felt like intricate carvings, a texture she couldn't quite decipher in the gloom. With a grunt, she leveraged the box, inch by painstaking inch, towards the light. Dust motes danced in the sunbeams that slanted through the library window, illuminating the ancient wood as it emerged. It was a chest, really. More than a box, approximately a foot long and half as wide, crafted from a dark, rich timber that had mellowed to a deep umber over centuries. Its surface was a tapestry of interwoven vines and leaves, so meticulously carved they seemed to writhe beneath her gaze. The craftsmanship spoke of an age when artistry was paramount, each curve and swirl imbued with a quiet dignity. There was no visible lock, no clasp, just a seamless polished surface that suggested a hidden mechanism. Ilara ran a thumb over the wood, a strange sense of reverence washing over her. This wasn't just a container, it was a work of art, a secret keeper. A faint click, almost imperceptible, startled her. She hadn't consciously done anything, yet a thin seam now ran along the top edge of the chest. With bated breath, she lifted the lid. The metallic scent intensified, mingling now with the faint, sweet aroma of aged paper and something else, something indefinable, like distant earth and forgotten magic. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded crimson velvet, lay a stack of yellowed parchment and a single glimmering object. Ilara's breath hitched. It was a key, slender and elegant, crafted from polished silver that seemed to absorb and refract the light. Its head wasn't a typical loop or intricate design, but a stylized symbol, a delicate, intertwined knot, reminiscent of the carvings on the chest itself. The silver was cool against her palm, oddly heavy for its size. She turned it over, examining the knot. A knot that felt strangely familiar, as if she'd seen it in a dream or a half-forgotten memory. It pulsed with an almost imperceptible energy, a silent invitation. Beneath the key lay the parchments. Gingerly, she lifted the first one. It was a map, meticulously drawn, its edges brittle with age. The paper crackled softly as she unfolded it, revealing a sprawling, detailed depiction of the Vance estate. Only, it wasn't the estate she knew. This map showed features long vanished, or perhaps never truly existed in the modern era. Her eyes traced the faded ink, following the winding lines that denoted ancient paths and forgotten groves. One section, in particular, captured her attention. In the northeastern corner, where now only a dense, overgrown thicket stood, the map depicted a meticulously designed area labeled, in elegant script, the Whisperwood Labyrinth. It wasn't a simple hedge maze. The drawing showed a complex network of spiraling paths and concentric circles, interspersed with small enigmatic symbols. A shiver traced its way down her spine. The labyrinth was clearly a place of intention, a deliberate creation, yet no trace of it remained above ground. She carefully unfolded the second map. This one was even older, its ink more faded, its parchment almost translucent. It showed the original layout of the manor house itself, a grander, more expansive structure than the one she was currently restoring. What fascinated her was a section marked Subterranean Network, detailing a series of tunnels and chambers beneath the main building, a secret world hidden from view. A faint red X had been meticulously drawn over one of these chambers, and next to it, a small, faded inscription that she had to squint to read, the heart of the labyrinth. Ilara's mind reeled. The silver key, the ancient maps, the whisper of a labyrinth hidden beneath a wild thicket. a subterranean network beneath the very floors she walked. This was more than a hidden panel. It was an unfolding narrative, a thread of history reaching out across centuries. The quiet resilience she'd cultivated over the past weeks was now infused with an exhilarating sense of purpose, a burgeoning adventure. The estate wasn't just a burden. It was a puzzle, and she, it seemed, had just found the first piece. The implications were staggering. This wasn't merely about restoring a dilapidated house. It was about uncovering its soul, its forgotten stories, and with each revelation, the weight of her family's dismissive judgments seemed to lighten, replaced by a growing conviction that she was on the cusp of something extraordinary. Her fingers tightened around the silver key, its cool metal a promise of deeper secrets yet to be revealed. The Whisperwood Labyrinth beckoned. The Whisperwood Labyrinth, the library's heavy oak table, became Ilara's command center, the sprawling parchment a stark counterpoint to the dust motes capering in the afternoon sun. Magnifying glass clutched, her brow furrowed, she delved into the ancient drawings. The first map, crude yet remarkably precise, sketched the Vance estate with a spaghetti of lines. The Whisperwood Labyrinth. Not a garden maze, as she'd initially pictured, but a subterranean network, intricate as a root system, spreading beneath Willow Creek Manor. The second map, even more aged and faded, detailed the manor's foundations, highlighting specific chambers, especially the heart of the labyrinth. Her finger traced the lines, her mind a whirlwind of reconciliation. The Whisperwood wasn't myth. It was stone and earth, an architectural marvel hidden below, generations of meticulous planning, a secret meticulously guarded, whispered from the design's intricacy. Her ancestors, whom she'd always considered simple, if eccentric landowners, possessed a profound depth she was only now unearthing. The heart, the marked chamber, lay directly under the manor, accessible from a specific point on the labyrinth map, days blurred into a single focused study. Ilara cross-referenced the ancient maps with old architectural blueprints of the house, mentally aligning landmarks on the property with the cryptic sketches. The maps indicated several entry points, all cleverly disguised, a disappearing spring by the old weeping willow, and another, more subtle, within the manor itself. Her deductions pointed to the library for the latter, seamlessly integrated into its existing structure. The library, a silent cavernous space, now hummed with new significance. Every shelf, every panel, held a potential key. She moved with deliberate slowness, her hands gliding over the spines of forgotten books, the carved edges of the fireplace, the rich, dark paneling. The silver key, warm in her palm, felt like a divining rod, subtly pulling her. The map directed her to a section of wall concealed behind a particular bookshelf, tucked away in the far corner, near seldom disturbed Latin texts and archaic philosophical treatises. Her heart began to beat a slow, heavy rhythm as she approached the designated area, the air thickening with palpable anticipation. One by one, she removed the weighty volumes until the shelf stood bare. Beneath a fine film of dust, a faint seam in the wood paneling revealed itself, a hairline fissure, almost invisible, outlining a section of the wall. She pressed, pushed, ran her fingers along its edge, searching for any give, any latch. Nothing. Then, her gaze caught on a small ornate carving on the bookshelf's central pillar, an intertwined knot of vines mirroring a recurring motif from the chest. Within its heart, barely discernible, a tiny camouflaged keyhole waited. The silver key slid into the lock with a soft metallic whisper, a perfect fit, a testament to its maker's foresight. Ilara held her breath, the library's silence amplifying the rasp of the turning mechanism. A faint click echoed, seeming to reverberate through the very foundations of the house. With a gentle push, the disguised section of the bookshelf, heavy and resistant, swung inward with a low, mournful creak. A gust of cool, musty air, redolent of damp earth and forgotten time, wafted from the opening. Beyond the threshold lay an abyss of impenetrable darkness, a void that seemed to consume the library's fading light. Elara hesitated, a tremor running through her. This was it, the culmination of her solitary work, the first true step into the estate's deepest secrets. Fear, cold and sharp, pricked at her, but it was swiftly eclipsed by a surge of exhilarating curiosity. She grabbed a sturdy lantern from a nearby table, its wick already trimmed, and lit it with a trembling hand. The flickering flame cast long, dancing shadows, transforming the familiar room into something ancient and mysterious. Taking a deep, fortifying breath, she stepped across the threshold. The floor beneath her feet was rough-hewn stone, cool and uneven. The air, heavy with the scent of undisturbed earth and centuries of silence, pressed in around her. Her lantern's light struggled against the oppressive gloom, revealing only a short stretch of narrow, winding tunnel. The wooden door, its outer facade perfectly disguised, swung shut behind her with a soft thud, plunging her into a deeper, more profound darkness. She was alone, enveloped by Willow Creek's secrets, about to embark on a journey into the heart of the Whisperwood Labyrinth. A chamber of wonders, the labyrinth's cool, damp breath enveloped Elara, carrying the faint tang of earth and ancient stone. Her flashlight beam, a solitary lance against the crushing dark, skittered across rough-hewn walls, revealing the subtle marks of forgotten chisels. The passage, narrower than the library's secret entrance had suggested, demanded she duck her head as the ceiling dipped. Each step echoed unnervingly, then was swallowed by the profound silence, deeper than any she'd known in the manor above. She moved cautiously, her hand tracing the cold, uneven stone, a grounding tether in the inky blackness. The path coiled and snaked, a deliberate puzzle rather than a haphazard crawl space. Her mind, usually prone to anxious tangents, was surprisingly lucid, focused entirely on the immediate. She noticed faint, intricate symbols carved into some larger stones, patterns that seemed to ripple at the edge of her vision. These weren't mere guideposts, but artistic flourishes, hinting at a purpose beyond simple passage. This wasn't just a utility tunnel. It was part of something grander, more intentional. After what felt like an eternity, the corridor began to expand, the ceiling gradually rising. The air, though still cool, felt less constricted, less heavy. She squeezed through a final, particularly tight spot, the rough stone scraping her jacket. Then, the passage gave way abruptly. Elara gasped, the sound lost in the sheer vastness of the space. Her flashlight, once so commanding, now struggled against the chamber's sheer scale. It was immense, a cavern carved from the earth's very core, yet unmistakably shaped by human design. The walls, though still stone, were smoother, almost polished in places, scattering the limited light in a diffuse glow. This chamber was a forgotten sanctuary, a time capsule suspended beneath the world. Dust motes danced in the sparse illumination, catching the light like tiny ethereal stars. Her beam swept over rows of tall, slender bookshelves, laden with leather-bound volumes, their titles obscured by layers of accumulated dust. Antique furniture, draped in white linen shrouds, stood like silent sentinels. An elaborate writing desk with delicate inlay, a plush velvet armchair whose true color was only hinted at, A long, elegant dining table surrounded by high-backed chairs. Each piece whispered of refined taste, a life of quiet luxury abandoned to the earth's embrace. Ilara's heart thrummed with awe and disbelief. This was no mere storage room. It was a curated space, a collection of cherished possessions. Who had owned them? Why had they been hidden with such meticulous care? The air here was strangely still, devoid of the musty decay one might expect. It felt preserved, almost expectant. She ventured deeper. Her steps hushed on what appeared to be an intricate mosaic floor, its colors muted by centuries of dust. Her fingers brushed against an ornate globe stand, its brass dulled by time. On a smaller table, beneath a sheer sheet, she glimpsed the curve of a porcelain teacup and a delicate silver spoon. This was not a place for simple abandonment. It was a sanctuary of memory, a repository of a forgotten family's life. The cousin's dismissive remarks about Ilara's simple ancestors echoed in her mind, then shattered like glass against the undeniable evidence of this hidden grandeur. Her gaze, drawn by an inexplicable pull, finally settled on the room's epicenter. There, bathed in the direct beam of her flashlight, stood a large chest. It was unlike anything else in the chamber, radiating an almost primal significance. Carved from dark, heavy wood, it was adorned with intricate, swirling patterns that seemed to writhe and interlace, depicting scenes she couldn't quite decipher from this distance. Bands of tarnished silver secured its edges, and in the very center of its lid, a formidable lock, unlike any she had ever encountered, glinted faintly. It was a lock that promised secrets, a final barrier to something truly profound. A shiver, not of cold, but of profound anticipation, traced its way down Ilara's spine. The Whisperwood Labyrinth had indeed led her to a chamber of wonders, and at its heart lay a mystery waiting to be unlocked. The true inheritance. The silver key, cool and smooth beneath her fingertips, seemed to absorb all sound, its weight in the silent chamber impossibly profound. More than mere metal, it felt like a direct current to a hidden past, humming with promised revelations. Ilara's breath caught as she gently guided it into the elaborate lock. A delicate click, sharp and precise, reverberated through the vast space. Weeks of mounting anticipation, a coiled spring tightening with every cleared overgrown path. Every swept, dusty floorboard now vibrated on the precipice of release. With a deep sense of awe, Ilara clasped the ornate handles, slowly, deliberately, raising the heavy lid. A soft, almost otherworldly luminescence spilled forth, bathing the aged wood in an ethereal glow. Her sharp intake of breath was not shock, but pure, unadulterated wonder. Cradled within layers of perfectly preserved velvet and silk, lay not traditional riches, but treasures of a profoundly different nature. Her eyes, wide with disbelief, swept over a miniature portrait, barely larger than her palm. Its brushstrokes were so delicate, they seemed to imbue the subject's serene gaze with life. Undeniably, a Van Dyck, a Flemish Baroque masterpiece, its worth transcended mere estimation. Beside it, meticulously rolled and protected in parchment, rested what appeared to be original musical scores, their staves adorned with elegant, unfamiliar notations. One, unrolled just a fraction, bore a signature Ilara instantly recognized from countless art history texts. Mozart. Her fingers trembled as she reached for a leather-bound folio. Inside, pressed between acid-free sheets, were botanical illustrations of breathtaking precision, each petal and leaf rendered with both scientific exactitude and artistic flair. Beneath these, a stack of brittle yellowed documents, their looping, elegant script, bearing the seals of forgotten empires and the signatures of figures whispered about in historical sagas. Land deeds from centuries past, contracts bearing the Vancian crest, and personal correspondence hinted at a vast network of influence and patronage. This was no mere collection. It was a meticulously curated legacy, a testament to generations of refined taste, insatiable intellectual curiosity, and astonishing affluence. The estate, the labyrinth, the very chamber itself, it all coalesced into a singular, astounding truth. Her ancestors hadn't been merely eccentric. They were visionaries, profound collectors, influential patrons, their true inheritance meticulously guarded from the world and their own dismissive descendants. Elara sank to the floor, surrounded by the open chest, for what felt like endless hours, absorbing the sheer magnitude of her discovery. The air in the chamber, once simply cool, now thrummed with a vibrant energy, a silent dialogue between past and present, the dismissive whispers, the outright mockery, the cold shoulders of her family, all evaporated in the face of this undeniable proof of her profound heritage. She wasn't inheriting a burden. She was inheriting a secret kingdom. For a time, the world beyond the labyrinth remained oblivious. Elara, ever meticulous, carefully catalogued each item, her hands guided by a potent newfound purpose. She scoured online databases, cross-referenced historical records, and with every revelation, the true astronomical value of her find crystallized. This wasn't merely a comfortable inheritance, it was a fortune, one that dwarfed anything her family had ever amassed. But secrets, particularly those of such immense magnitude, rarely remain submerged indefinitely. The initial whispers began subtly, carried on the gentle breeze of local gossip. A neighbor, noticing the increased activity at the long-neglected estate, mentioned it to a distant cousin. A contractor, hired to patch a section of the manor's leaking roof, inadvertently let slip a comment about the peculiar scope of some internal renovations. These tiny currents of information, like tributaries merging into a burgeoning river, slowly gathered strength. The ripples of Elara's discovery eventually reached the polished, sterile offices of Vance and Sons. Elias Vance, Elara's uncle, sat at his mahogany desk, a newspaper folded neatly beside his untouched coffee. A small article, tucked away in the local section, mentioned unusual activity at the old Vance estate, hinting at significant restoration efforts. He scoffed, recalling his sister Mildred's will, the paltry sum Elara had been bequeathed, and the dilapidated property. Poor girl, he'd thought then, trying to conjure something from nothing. Yet, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. A phone call from a concerned acquaintance, then a casual mention from a junior partner who had seen the local news blog. Something about Elara and the estate, sir. Apparently she's found something. Elias, usually so composed, felt a prickle of unease. He dismissed it as nonsense. What could Elara, the quiet, artistic one, possibly unearth in that crumbling mausoleum? But the seed of doubt had been planted, and it began to sprout. The estate, which they had all so readily written off, suddenly felt different, significant, and the image of Elara, alone amidst the dust and decay, began to transform in his mind from a figure of pity to one of unsettling intrigue. He picked up his phone, his thumb hovering over a contact. He needed to know, he needed to understand. The true inheritance, it seemed, was only just beginning to unfurl itself. The reckoning. The sleek black sedan, a jarring counterpoint to Elara's dented pickup, grated along Willow Creek's gravel drive. Liam and Chloe Sterling, trailing their parents, alighted with an exaggerated show of concern, smiles too wide, eyes unnaturally bright. This familiar charade, however, was now playing out on Ilara's stage. "Ilara, darling, we were so worried," Chloe trilled, her designer dress a bizarre flourish amid the wild, rambling gardens. She enveloped Ilara in a hug that felt more like a quick inventory, her gaze darting past Ilara's shoulder, seeking rumored gleam. "We heard whispers, such a shock." Liam, ever the less circuitous, bypassed pleasantries entirely. "Amazing, really. All this time under our noses, Aunt Mildred, bless her eccentric heart, always full of surprises." He clapped Ilara's shoulder, a gesture less of camaraderie than a claim staked. "Must be quite the windfall. I mean, after all the effort you've put in." His eyes, mirroring Chloe's, were rapacious, sweeping over the manor's meticulously restored facade, now luminous in the autumn sun. Ilara met their gazes, a tranquil certainty settling over her. The shy, insecure girl, once wounded by every dismissive remark, was gone. In her place stood a woman who understood the true weight of her inheritance. "It has been an experience," she replied, her voice unwavering, belying the apprehension of mere months past. "Come in. Mr. Abernathy is here." The mention of the lawyer pricked Liam's carefully cultivated composure. The Sterling parents, until then politely aloof, exchanged a swift, anxious glance. Inside, the manor's grand hall, once a repository of dust and neglect, now thrummed with revitalized spirit. Sunlight poured through polished panes, illuminating intricate carvings on the refurbished staircase. Mr. Abernathy, poised and professional, occupied the imposing dining table, a precise stack of documents before him. He offered a courteous nod as the Sterlings entered, their feigned concern rapidly dissipating into thinly veiled avarice. "So, Ilara," Liam began, leaning against a newly polished mahogany side table, his tone casual, almost conspiratorial, "about these discoveries. We've been talking, and, well, you know how Aunt Mildred was. A bit forgetful sometimes. It's entirely possible she intended for these things to be shared amongst the family. After all, we're all her kin." Chloe's head bobbed vigorously. "Absolutely. We were so close to her, in our own way. And honestly, Ilara, managing something of this magnitude, it's a huge undertaking. We could help. A joint venture, perhaps? We have excellent contacts in the art world, you know." Her smile was cloying, but her eyes held a frigid calculation. Ilara listened patiently, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on her lips. She had foreseen this, mentally rehearsed this moment countless times. "I appreciate your sudden interest," she began, her voice clear and resonant in the newly vibrant space. However, Aunt Mildred's will was quite explicit. She gestured to Mr. Abernathy. The lawyer cleared his throat, adjusting his spectacles. "Indeed. Mildred Vance's will, dated 2 years prior to her passing, clearly stipulates that the entire estate of Willow Creek, including all its contents, discovered or otherwise, is bequeathed solely to Ilara Vance. There is no provision for any other beneficiary regarding this property or its contents." He paused, allowing his words to sink in. Furthermore, Ms. Vance had the foresight to include a clause specifically addressing any potential disputes regarding previously undiscovered assets, stating unequivocally that they are to be considered part of the estate, and therefore Ilara Vance's sole possession. A stunned silence descended. Liam's jaw tightened, his casual posture dissolving into rigid indignation. Chloe's forced smile finally crumbled, revealing a flash of genuine fury. Their parents looked crestfallen, their hopes of a sudden windfall dissolving like morning mist. "But this is unprecedented," Liam blustered, pushing off the table. "How could she have known? This changes everything." Aunt Mildred was many things, but she was never foolish, Alara interjected, her voice cutting through Liam's indignation. "She knew her own mind, and she knew her family. She left me Willow Creek, not just the dilapidated house, but everything within it, because she trusted me to see its true value, to restore its legacy." She stood then, walking to the large bay window, her gaze sweeping over the grounds she had so painstakingly reclaimed. "And that is precisely what I intend to do. I've been working with a team of experts, and the collection, as you call it, is far more significant than any of us could have imagined. It's not merely a collection of valuables, it's a testament to a forgotten lineage, a legacy of art, science, and history." She turned back to face them, her eyes shining with a fierce, quiet determination. "I will be establishing a private museum here at Willow Creek. It will be open to the public, a place where these treasures can be appreciated and studied. It will be a lasting tribute to the Vance family and to Aunt Mildred's vision." The finality in her voice, the unshakable confidence, left no room for argument. Liam and Chloe, stripped of their power and pretense, stood defeated. Their faces, once etched with avarice, were now marked by humiliation and resentment. They had come to claim a share, to mock and belittle, and instead they had witnessed Ilara's triumph, her quiet strength, an unassailable fortress. Without another word, Liam turned, his back stiff with indignation, and walked out, Chloe trailing behind him, her designer dress rustling with frustrated agitation. Their parents, looking utterly deflated, mumbled hurried goodbyes and followed. The gravel crunched again as their car sped away, leaving Alara standing in her reclaimed home, the silence now truly her own. The reckoning was complete.